Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a critic, consultant, and programmer based in Toronto, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Aaron Barnett, a screenwriter and producer with dozens of credits in film and television, most recently as the co-producer of Jason Statham's Mutiny in theaters now. He's also started a career as an author of movie novelizations, with his take on Matthew Bright's Freeway being published this Sunday, August 30th, by Echo On Publications. You can order it at echohorror.com. It's a pretty nifty idea, honestly. Aaron picked State of Grace, Phil Joanou's 1990 crime drama starring Sean Penn as Terry Noonan, an undercover cop who comes home to Hell's Kitchen to infiltrate and break up an Irish crime ring run by his boyhood pals the Flannerys, big brother Frankie, played by Ed Harris, and hot-headed Jackie, played by Gary Oldman. And when Terry rekindles his romance with their sister Kate, played by Robin Wright, that's when things get really complicated, because if he's going to bring the Flannerys down, she's going to end up as collateral damage. Beautifully shot and drenched in sadness, this should have been the movie that established Joanou as a major cinematic talent on the heels of his blockbuster U2 concert film Rattle and Hum. But State of Grace had the misfortune to open against Martin Scorsese's GoodFellas, so now it's a lost treasure waiting to be rediscovered. Aaron will help you with that. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I'm sort of at a point in my career where a lot of what I'm sort of focusing on is stuff that I would watch. And in doing that, I sort of, revisit things that kind of hit me and I suppose to a degree inspired with me or have stayed with me. And I think a lot of that came out as well during, and I think where I sort of came to this realization was sort of during lockdown and when all we were doing was watching movies. And it was just kind of like I sort of revisited a lot of things. And State of Grace, obviously being a film I've seen many, many times. It wasn't just over lockdown that I revisited it, but just in going back and visiting old things and introducing them to my son and that kind of stuff. I really was like, came to understand the type of film that I really did truly love and really and inspired me one way or the other and my tastes and really made a decision then that things that I kind of get involved with going forward kind of have to, as I said, be things that either I would watch or inspire me in that way, so and I think with State of Grace, it's one of the early films that I can remember. Because I guess it came out in 1990, although I saw it on VHS like a lot of people because it didn't really have much of a theatrical. But I think it was a period where I was starting to pay attention to things like directors and cinematographers and those kind of things and kind of, when you're a kid, usually every movie's awesome just because it's such an exciting thing to see, to see a movie, right? So I think as a teenager, as my, and I say this very loosely, but as my taste started to become more discerning and I started to pay attention to, as I said, to things like directors and cinematographers and things that kind of had mood and things that were a little more complex. And this was a movie that kind of hit me. And for whatever reason is one that I just come back to pretty frequently.
Yeah. I saw it theatrically. I was lucky enough to catch a press screening. It was one of those Wednesday night radio audience crowds where it was full. Sure. It was a full theater. It might even have been during TIFF because the film opened in September. Right. And it was maybe like the Wednesday, the end of the festival, and I had to make time to go see this, and I was sort of grudging about it. And it's like, I got to work. What am I doing? There's other stuff happening. And then I'll go to see this movie. It's like, but why isn't this in the film festival? This is great. What's wrong with people?
Yeah. Well, I think at the time, I think because Orion was having troubles, it didn't get much of a release. But I do remember my first kind of encounter with it, and I don't remember why I was there. So I grew up in Peterborough, but I was in Toronto a lot. My dad's family's from here, and I had this sort of very cool uncle who really was my introduction to things like art house cinema and all that. So I was down visiting him, and I remember, for whatever reason, vividly seeing that original theatrical poster at the Varsity. And I think at the time I was clocking to the fact that it was Phil Joanou who, had done, at that point I knew obviously 3 O'Clock High, but Rattle and Hum, back when U2 were actually cool. And I thought, oh, this is going to be awesome. I like Sean Penn. I like this director. And then it didn't get a wide release. So it took however long it took until it came out on video. And that was my sort of first encounter. But I remember just being really, really wowed by it. And it's, a lot of, so much of it too, because I think it was also, for me, it was a lot of firsts. Like it was a mob movie that wasn't the Italian mob. It was a different, just the idea, because it was kind of like, well, it definitely was pre-Sopranos and all that, but the idea that the gangsters in it were kind of like, at best they were upper middle class, right? Like they were kind of guys that lived in, the head of the Ed Harris lives in the suburbs, lives in Jersey, but he's running this mob, and it was still when it was pre Giuliani, so New York was still this kind of like taboo, scary, intriguing, place to those of us who only knew it by film and TV at that point. I didn't know what Hell's Kitchen was. I'd never heard of it. So this was just kind of a new kind of part of New York to sort of experience, and to see this new kind of gangster was really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny now watching it, what is it, 36 years later?
Yeah.
It's The Sopranos. Like it is, I mean, it's a
Right.
different milieu, but it is the approach. Like it's a lived-in exploration. And of course, like Goodfellas comes out 2 weeks later, and just
Sure.
of course, this is why the film disappears. You can't compete with that movie at that point in time. And Orion didn't have the money to go up against Warner, even in the first place, if they'd wanted to.
Mm.
But like it's a kitchen sink crime picture,
Yeah.
which wasn't unusual at the time because it was how mid-range, like even like mid-budget independents were dealing with stuff. But this is that tiny moment before Tarantino, right? Like where everything
Yes.
gets rewritten and all the rules get changed. And this film is so beautiful. Like just, I mean, it's gorgeous to look at. It's so
Yeah.
elegant and it's so scuzzy at the same time that I think people just didn't know how to describe it to each other. And by the time they got, as you said, by the time they got around to, hey, this is good, we should go see it, it was gone.
Right. Yeah, no, and you're right. It is that was another thing that really struck me about it too. Like it is really just a gorgeous looking film. Like Jordan Cronenweth, who did Blade Runner amongst other things. I mean, that alone to have on your resume is pretty incredible. But the way that it's lit, and how, and again, it's really through subsequent watches that I've sort of gleaned more, again, now that I work in the industry, and I just have age on my side. You notice a lot of things, like everyone in it is always dressed, more or less in black or dark stuff, so they're almost like silhouettes, except that they've got these really amazing highlights,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not enough for them to do a wet down in an alleyway. They also do a wet down on the side of the building, right? So they've just got, like, the lighting is just so incredible in it, and they've really just created this world, and as I said, just the way in which they shoot these characters is just, it's so amazing. They are in a lot of ways like creatures of the night, and just the way that they kind of cover that is fantastic. And this is also another kind of standout too. This was early Gary Oldman. Like this was pre Leon, so he wasn't chewing scenery the way he can sometimes do.
Yeah, but he is in
And
his dirtbag phase,
yes,
right? Like
yes,
Sid and Nancy's already happened,
sure,
and now
yeah,
this, and then there was another one right around the same time. I can't remember what it was. Oh, Romeo was Bleeding and True Romance. They're all ahead of him.
yeah, right,
But there was that moment where I think it's just the way he does an American accent
yeah,
that somehow got every single director going, oh, he's a piece. Let's just cast this guy as the
yeah,
worst person on the face of the earth and still make him human because he's Gary Oldman.
sure. Well, no, absolutely. And it's funny that, yeah, and I think I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right. I think he was sort of the prototype of what the dirtbag is. I mean, he's just, he looks like he needs a good scrubbing this whole movie, but the way in which he can, really turn on a dime with just a look that he does. Like, there's the scene in the alleyway with Ed Harris where he's sort of giving him shit, and he's like, you're a fucking embarrassment, and Gary just kind of laughs it off. The Gary Oldman character kind of laughs it off. But then there's just this tiny little bump at the end of the scene where you see his eyes, just this is a tiny shift, and you know that he's really wounded by this. It's a really fantastic performance, and I think really without perhaps realizing it at the time, that was also something I was kind of coming into, was just understanding, or at least being able to appreciate what a nuanced kind of performance was. And this movie's full of them. I mean, Sean Penn is fantastic. The opening scene with him, he's pretty monosyllabic and doesn't say, but communicates so much in that scene with Totoro. So yeah, it's there's just a lot in this thing, and I think that it's funny because I do feel that I kind of assume that a lot of people don't know it, but it feels like the more I bring it up, there are a lot of people that have found it maybe later in life, but it is kind of something that has sort of a long tail behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear that because I certainly tried as hard as I could to get people to see the damn
Right.
thing. And it's been in and out of availability. I think
Right.
my Blu-ray is one of the Twilight Time releases, which was, this little run of Nick Redmond set it up, the journalist, and it was an attempt to rescue films from studios that weren't interested in sharing, right? Like MGM had the rights, I think, and they just weren't doing anything with it. And so he got it out on Blu-ray and they got a restored or a new high definition master and all this stuff. And then because Twilight Time was a licensee, they only printed 3,000 of them and they sold out instantly.
Oh, wow.
So they're like this little holy grail. And I got one as soon as it became available. I ordered it and like bought it and got it. But that was it for the longest time. That was the only way to get it. And now it's available from some, I think it's called Sandpiper or Rainmaker, some weird indie label.
Oh, I don't know them. Yeah.
They released, I think it's the same master, but without the special features. So if you see it, grab it.
I actually just recently upgraded to the Blu-ray, but I don't think there's anything much in the way of special features on it. I mean, obviously it's restored, but that's why I know before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about the imprint, but I need to kind of really explore the imprint edition because I think there's quite a bit on that.
Yeah, 4K restoration, new special features. I requested it, but have yet to receive it. Maybe they aren't even going to send it to me, but I'll get it. I'll get my hands on it.
Hopefully they're listening.
Yeah, because I will let them know. But it is one of those movies. Like this is what I was saying about Tarantino, and I brought this up a couple of times before. It happened with Miami Blues,
right?
But there were a handful of films that were released right around 89, 90, 91, before Reservoir Dogs came out, but when it was in production, that are like the dinosaurs that don't know the meteor is coming. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They're really good dinosaurs, but they are representative of a type of thriller that is about to appear redundant or obsolete.
Yeah.
Because everybody loved the Tarantino thing. Oh, it was One False Move. That's the other one.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Carl Franklin's film, which is finally being acclaimed as a landmark.
Yeah. Well, I remember when, I the only reason I even knew that, I think it was on like when Siskel and Ebert would do their they do like a year-end recap of like the most underappreciated or the movies that people missed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's because it was like, I think IRS back when they were trying to be a film label put it out.
It might have been. I mean, it was Columbia Home Video anyway.
Yeah. And it was just never got much, but I saw it back then. And then of course I have the Criterion now, of course, but there's a whole bunch in that whole era. I mean, they late 90s or late 80s, early 90s, like right at the turn of the start of the 90s, there was a lot of stuff like, Blue Steel and One False Move and State of Grace. And, eventually things like Deep Cover, like there was a lot of these really cool, stylish, but not to the detriment of the film, but these sort of stylish, noir thrillers that were just, and they were kind of, in their own way, grim and grungy, but still had a real look to them, and it's a great period. And I don't think any one of those really, maybe One False Move, but most of those films weren't even really that well received at the time. But now there's been a real reappraisal of them, I would say.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, you're describing what became neo-noir,
right?
In opposition, I think that term was coined in opposition to the self-reflexive meta stuff that Tarantino was doing, and that other, like Robert Rodriguez, other filmmakers would play with our expectations of what genre would be. but there was a sense of, and this again, After Dark, My Sweet, there's another one, James Foley,
Yeah.
phenomenal
Fantastic.
movie,
Yeah.
Deadly Serious, and
Yep.
Sun Blasted. Like that and State of Grace are the things I think of when I think of neo-noir, just because there is, like, they are glorious cinematic experiences, but there's no fun to be had. Like, they're not trying to be that kind of entertainment.
Yes.
And the seriousness is the thing that drew me to it. Like, One False Move is about these two irresistible forces on a collision course. The good guy and the bad guys just moving towards each other, and they don't see each other until the last 30 seconds.
Sure.
And it's so thrilling because the momentum just carries you through, but you also know that there's this dread that's gathering. Nothing's going to go well. State of Grace, like, is I don't even know, like, it's a factor of 10 more intense.
Sure.
Because in those first 20 minutes, we understand all the stakes, and then there are further complications, and it gets darker and darker and darker, both visually and thematically, until nobody is going to get out alive. And if somebody does, that's going to be a miracle. And it's just like that tension comes from caring about who will survive, because by the end of it, you even kind of like Jackie. Like, he is, as you say, not a great person, but he's got a heart. And that, like Burgess Meredith's scene, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
One scene I have never forgotten, his line readings, and the fact that it takes you a little while to recognize him, because Mickey is still such a vivid memory, that late performance from him that sort of recontextualized him for a generation. And it's just like, oh, he's doing this, and it's quiet and sad. Like, it is a guy who knows he's pathetic.
Yeah. He's just an old man eating stewed tomatoes out of a can.
Yeah. But also, he does it with this practiced dignity. Like, this is the world he's built for himself, and he's surviving in it. And it derails the movie in the best possible way, because you just get a sense of the normal lives, the ordinary people that are being impacted by all this crime.
Yes.
And you're not just watching like a hermetically sealed universe where everybody's bad, which, as much as I love Goodfellas, that's the whole point of Goodfellas, right? Like, everybody's dirty, everybody's touched by this. There is no cleanness. And if you do get out, you hate yourself for it, even if it's the way to save your own life. Here, like, we are aware that all the main characters, the central figures in this story, are part of this cancer, but not everybody has cancer.
Yes.
Right? Like, there's glimmers of life, not hope, just life.
Yes.
And we're steeping in it. And I find that just so appealing as a narrative gimmick, right? Like, to break that veil and show us what's going on.
No, absolutely. And I think relatable is maybe too strong a word for it, but it's a little more grounded in a reality that you could potentially conceive of, as opposed to, the Goodfellas world, which is just, it's just so otherworldly, which it no doubt was at the time. I mean, clearly, but there's something about it. And I think it's also interesting too, and this is, mind you, with hindsight, looking at that, but one of the main sort of, themes in the film is that part of the reason that Ed Harris is looking to sort of do business with the sort of Italian mobsters is that they're all getting pushed out by the rich, right? Like, Hell's Kitchen is being gentrified. Because this is sort of just it was pre-Giuliani by a few years anyway. So, and that's certainly something, gentrification is certainly something that we've seen the ravages of that. And a lot of people can, from many cities can sort of identify with that. So, so it was interesting that was a backdrop of this.
Yeah. It's the sense of, well, it's like the new West Side Story. All of this is for nothing. Right? Like, you were shown in the very beginning of Spielberg's movie that the bulldozers are already starting.
Right.
This territory is gone.
Right.
And people are killing each other over not even ownership, just temporary occupancy.
Sure.
And here,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Here it's almost like it's part of it, the sense of futility, because some of these people have nice houses, but they're not going to live to retire at them.
Right.
And the sense that all of this is going to end badly for everyone who's involved.
Yes.
Like, it's not even as pleasant as The Godfather, where you get a few decades on top before somebody comes for your family.
Right.
right? Like it's all just sort of it's what am I trying to think of here? It's not even instant gratification, it's momentary gratification. You can get whatever you
Yes.
want, but you can't keep it. You can't keep your relationships, you can't keep your loyalties, you can't keep your friends. Sooner or later, and probably sooner,
Right.
someone's going to come along. And of course, the whole point of this is that Terry, Sean Penn's character, is there to bring everyone down. Like he is an undercover police officer, and we
Yeah.
know it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting too, and I think it's also, what does it say that the guy, who's kind of in the Ed Harris character obviously is not, he's in no means, by no means is he benevolent, but I mean, what does it say as well that, one of these guys that's sort of holding, fighting to keep hold of this neighborhood and all, like he doesn't even live there. He lives in Jersey. So like, what does that say? That, he's already, that's already in his his rearview mirror. Like, it's just not a, no, he's certainly not as nostalgic for it as the Jackie character, the Gary Oldman character, who
Yeah.
very much lives there and is ingrained in it,
Oh,
right?
yeah, he's
So
incapable of change. Like that. That
yes,
is ultimately his biggest problem.
yeah,
He's the guy who should have grown up, should have figured out how dangerous everything is, and just decided to be the most dangerous, which meant he
right,
didn't have to change.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
He's the
but
he's the mob equivalent to the guy that peaked in high school.
yes,
You know what I mean? So
yeah, and probably stop
yeah,
showering then too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah, Frankie is the one who is smart enough to prevent a firefight just by hugging somebody. Like he has the
Yes,
instincts, right? He is the guy who is the success. And you can also see the weight of that on him because he knows someone's going to come at him at some point. You can't be on top forever. And then we have the other key relationship, which we haven't mentioned yet, which is the relationship between Terry and Kate.
yes,
Robin Wright's character, who is once again attracted to Terry, who was a boyfriend, went away, and has come
yeah.
back for her, and that gives us a human face for the damage that's been done in Terry's absence.
Well, she's I think more than anybody, more than any character, she really is the one that's sort of caught in between the two worlds, because she says at one point too, like, I tried to move uptown. I can't move far enough uptown to be out of this, right? Like she
Yeah,
doesn't really want to be part of it. So she's moved away, but try as she might, various things keep kind of dragging her back in. And Terry, Terry leaving is something that you thought might have been the thing to sort of give her that boost out, but to for whatever reason, there's still be it family or just the inability, financially to go that far. She's still got a bit of a safety blanket in that old neighborhood, right? So, and then how that gets turned on its head when Terry returns. One of my favorite scenes in that whole movie is that first scene where they're reconnected at the beginning, and it's after Terry shows up and he and Jackie are up all night drinking, and they're in the bar in the morning, and Kate comes in to visit, and it takes her a minute to even realize who's sitting at the table, right? And that whole scene when they're getting reacquainted, I remember just being really wowed at the time, because so much of that movie is in the react like so much of the coverage in that is based on the reaction of the people around the table who aren't speaking.
mm,
So whoever's sort of carrying the conversation at that point, we're rarely on them, and we're really on the people, that are seated with them, and their reaction either to what's being said or to each other. And that's really the two, Terry and Kate, reconnecting, and just so much of what's being communicated, between them with looks and stuff. It's just a really, really amazing scene, and a great example of, really not just deft direction, but also just amazing work by actors who, are doing it without, having to rely on dialogue purely.
yeah. Joanou was so good at this.
Yes.
He is such an interesting filmmaker. Like the fact that his career got derailed by two distributor failures
Yeah.
and like a project that didn't go forward, that just broke his heart. He was working on the American version of Seven Up.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was no, it was. It was just like Seven Up in America, 14 Up in America. It was a licensed thing with Granada Television. He shot the 14-year-old one in 1998, and for whatever reason, they just dropped him.
Wow.
And the whole thing just fell apart. And so he went into commercials and made a couple of movies, but just like clearly he wrote a novel a couple of years ago. That's what he's doing these days. He hasn't made a
Yeah.
movie since like in 10 years, since 2016.
Well, and what was interesting too, because he was kind of meant to be a bit of a big deal at the time, because there was all this talk of being Spielberg's protege, and because I think Spielberg had seen a short film when he had done, which kind of led to 3 O'clock High,
Yep.
and then I remember there was an HBO series, a noir series. It's not Angels in America, but something with a similar title. That he was one of the guest directors on, and he was, as I said, meant to be a big deal. And there was this, and I think he did Final Analysis, which bombed. It's a terrible movie, mind you,
Yeah.
but and Heaven's Prisoners, which also I think was also another one that was was that the studio one you were talking
That
about?
was Sad Web Pictures. Yeah, it fell apart on him.
Yeah, exactly. Which it's not a terrible movie. It's not great, but there was at least you could see bits of him in that one. But yeah, it just had a couple really bad bounces, and then and then as you say, it just kind of disappeared into the world of commercials and stuff.
Hey, it's Norm, interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I wrote about the new 4K editions of The War Game, Threads, and Mars Attacks, and subscribers to the paid tier also got my exclusive reviews of It Ends, HBO's Lanterns, and the return of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia in Friday's What's Worth Watching dispatch. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io and get caught up. It's one of those things where you have no idea what is ahead of you as a filmmaker. I get that, but the experiences he had in the very beginning must have just given him the sense that it's like being born in a really nice hotel, and you just can't understand that other people don't live like that. So
yeah,
it just feels like as his opportunities got smaller, he just pivoted and went away and decided to do something else entirely, which I guess, if your heart gets broken enough.
yeah,
But
and I think it's also a thing too, where there also it felt as well like there were a lot of filmmakers of his era, like the 90s were such a big deal for indie, and even with studio stuff, smaller movies, and I just there was that whole class of really interesting filmmakers that just kind of went away. I mean, some of them have managed to pivot and make a living in TV and all of that, but they just don't, they just don't exist in feature anymore. And it's unfortunate, because there was a lot of really, a lot of really solid talent there, but as things evolve.
Yeah, the mid-range disappears and there's nowhere to go but prestige TV. I mean, think about Miguel Arteta, who broke out with Star Maps around 96 or 97. It was a huge deal. And now he's did most of the Dexter show, I think.
Yep.
He's definitely shot a dozen or so episodes, but I think he's part of the reboot too. And it's just one of those things where you see his name and you're like, oh, okay, good. It's a living. It's a good living, I'm sure. But when you get to tell your own story, make your own statement. And with Joanou on this too, that's the other thing. Like Dennis Hopper was supposed to direct this thing. He was attached, and Bill Pullman was going to play the Ed Harris role, and then they both dropped out just before the start of Principal Photography.
Yeah.
And Joanou comes in and makes this, which is like so him.
Yes.
Right? Like he and Cronenweth, I assume, just reconceived the entire project visually.
It would be interesting to know, because I mean, obviously at this point, Hopper had worked with Sean Penn on Colors. So there was obviously going to be some shorthand and synergy there, but for me, I don't really see Bill Pullman in this. I don't see him as hard enough at all.
Not at that point in his career anyway.
But Hopper would have been interesting. We talk about really great neo noir. I mean, The Hot Spot is another one that's like just a criminally slept upon movie. So it would have been interesting. All of that was to say, I'm very happy that Phil Joanou got to do this, but I would have been, interested to see what Dennis Hopper's take would have been on it.
Yeah. And he was making Colors is an incredibly eccentric film for what it is. For that
Yes.
subject matter, he just went in and made something totally electrically weird about it. And
Yes.
Duvall's great and Penn's great. And yes, it's racist as hell, but that's sort of the point. It's
Yeah.
kind of about the flawed police, like all the things that people were expecting from that movie. What they got was not any of it. And
Yes.
I kind of always respected that. That's another one I saw with a big crowd who were completely confused by what was actually happening.
Well, I think a lot of it has also been it's that movie itself. I mean, it's still, to be honest, I watched it maybe 3-4 years ago, and it is still it's still pretty pro cop, but it is it's kind of amazing how just with the passage of time, it's also been sort of recontextualized, and and maybe this was just my lack of what sort of sophistication, but when I saw it, I just saw it as more of a straightforward, cops and robbers, and this is what it is to be a current day, LAPD officer. And now you look at it like these guys are fucking assholes, like these, and just really understanding, and I think it's criticism of a lot of things, but it is interesting how, kind of where we are in the world now to see a movie like that really, it hits differently for sure.
Oh yeah. Now it plays like the first 20 minutes of Training Day.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But for 2
Yeah.
straight hours.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maintaining that. And there's I think, it may not have been the case, but I think the tenderness that exists in State of Grace when
Yes.
there are flashes of relationships and genuine love between characters, and not just like Terry and Kate, it's Terry and Jackie, and it's Jackie and Frankie. Like, these people do feel real in the three-dimensional, lived in, like, these are not archetypal characters.
No.
They're like Jackie has embraced it, I think, because he's too limited to understand that he could be something else. He's just put himself in this box and stayed there so long that it's all he can do. He's reflexively an asshole.
Yeah.
And you get Tommy DeVito in Goodfellas too. This isn't a new idea,
right?
But they're both incredibly well drawn, well performed characters. And I keep comparing State of Grace and Goodfellas just because they opened opposite against each other, and they're both excellent versions of a type of cinema about crime. But it's also possible to watch them and think they were made 10 years apart, just because the styles are so different, and Scorsese's is so energetic and rattled and thrilling. And this is this quiet, minor key, sad thriller that is nevertheless just as powerful and just as well acted, and all of the above. Like, it's a great movie.
Well, I think one of the big differences too is that when you look at Goodfellas, like, there is a little, there's more than a little bit of glamour to it, and there are points at which, like, that I could see what about that lifestyle might have been enticed. Parts of it anyways were enticing. It's like, it looked, it's like a rock star lifestyle. There's none of that in State of Grace. It's all quite, grim and tragic. And and again, if Frankie is the pinnacle of success with his his 5-bedroom house in Jersey, it's like, I don't know if it's really worth. And meanwhile, he's still having to go do runs at night, roughing up local bartenders who aren't buying his booze. It's it's not the same kind of world of glamour at all. So it's a different look at organized crime.
Yeah, I think Goodfellas makes you appreciate the home touches. Like, we can almost smell the sauce that's cooking in the third act. And here it's just like, no, I know what that bar smells like. I know what that hallway smells like. This is sadness. Like, this is people who don't know anything else. And the Terry has gotten out and become a cop. Yeah. Which is maybe the one stretch that none of that got back to Frankie or Jackie. Nobody knew what happened to him. He just disappeared. Yeah.
It is a bit of a stretch, but pre-internet, pre-cell phone,
Exactly. And John Turturro is so much fun as his handler. That that you cannot hold it against them for a second that they do this, because yeah, it's just like, oh, there's a character in this film who is the most unlikable person in the entire picture, and he's the good guy. He's the one
Right.
person who's actually unambivalently a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was
Yeah,
trying to figure out, like, are we seeing him that way because that's how Terry sees him, as somebody who just keeps bothering him and won't leave him alone and keeps pushing him to do the thing he doesn't want to do? Like, is that
right.
subjective in any way, or is this guy just an asshole in a world of assholes?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think he is definitely an asshole in a world of assholes, but he's his own sort of special brand of that. Because the thing is, again, I would say there's nothing really benevolent about Woody. Like he's pushing Terry because he wants to win, right? He wants to be the victor in this situation, and really, like, with no regard to, I mean, obviously he doesn't give a shit about Terry's feelings in the matter, but really not even about his safety.
Mm,
Like it's because it gets really dicey there in a couple spots, and he's just like, he's literally taunting him, just calling him a crybaby, and just get on with it, essentially, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you do have an appreciation of the job. It's
yeah,
this, it can't be easy
sure,
working with these people because they're falling apart emotionally, physically. Nobody gets, like, almost nobody gets away from this without a bullet hole in them, at least one hole. But it's just so, it's oppressive, right? Like the world they live in, not the movie. The movie isn't oppressive. The
yeah,
movie is aware of it.
yeah.
And I think that's the thing that made it maybe a harder sell too. It feels like a much more serious drama than it really is.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to talk about, the sort of how oppressive the sort of world they're in is, and there's you know I mentioned earlier, there sometimes things can kind of turn with just a simple look in this, and there's the scene where Terry and Jackie go to burn down a building, and it's kind of played a little bit like they're kind of like two little school kids at a point, like laughing because they got away with it, right? But then again, there's just this final thing where you just sort of see like Sean Penn's face just slightly drop at the end, like what am I doing? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because he's still a cop who just helped burn down a building, and by the way, is probably pissed at the moment. Because that's the thing throughout a lot of this too. In order to keep up, he's drinking nonstop.
Yeah.
So, not making good decisions either, either for his life or for the job. So it's interesting in that respect too, because you're so used to seeing. I think certainly in that era too. Like I think that was another thing I liked about that period of noir films and cop stuff, is that the cops were definitely flawed, and it wasn't the line between good and bad was more than blurred,
Oh
like,
yeah.
it was barely there, right? Which probably, let's be honest, probably resembles, how things are done, in the
Yeah.
real world, anyhow. So,
I would
yeah, it
expect
was.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's honest about the appeal for him, for Terry. There is family here. Like this is his
yes,
world, and he's back, and he's kind of happy to be there, even though he has this
sure,
terrible mission that he has to carry out. But I really saw it this time through in a way that I hadn't noticed before. Penn has this quiet kind of resignation behind his eyes almost the whole time, where there is never any question whether this guy's going to flip. Like he'll tell Kate because he
right,
loves her and he
right,
wants her to know that it's dangerous,
yeah,
but he won't do anything that spares these people. Like he knows how bad things are and how bad things are going to get, and
yeah,
he's there to save other people, like stop other worse things from happening down. Like he's built this whole story for himself, and he kind of hints at it here and there. But there's also just like this regret in his eyes that I found so fascinating. I don't know that I ever noticed it before, where he's
yeah. No,
just like hurting the whole time.
yes. No, absolutely. And I think that, him thinking as well, like he kind of gets to this a little bit in the speech that he refers to the actual state of grace and how there is no such
Mm-hmm.
thing, and how he kind of came into the whole endeavor with an idea of how it was going to go, and before, it was too late before he even knew it, that like he realized none of it was going to go that way, and and to a degree, like, same as it ever was, but now he was neck deep in it, and really kind of not even helpless to stop it. Yes, helpless to stop it, but also like making it worse by his mere presence.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, he's Heisenberging it.
Mm-hmm.
There is
Mm-hmm.
just no good end to any of this, and he's just found himself falling back. Like I presume that these are the patterns that made him leave in the first place. Right?
Yes.
Drinking too much, getting too violent, not knowing what to do, getting pulled in too many different directions. It's just he's like regressing to his 20-year-old self or whoever,
Yes.
however old he was when it all went to hell. But you can also see the appeal of it because it lets him not think about anything else and he doesn't have any responsibilities and he's pushing back against his own desire, maybe is what's so interesting about Penn's. Like Sean Penn in 1990, I don't know that there was another actor as electric as him.
Sure.
Maybe Baldwin was just starting.
Right.
Miami Blues is around the same time. I'll give him that. But it's such a great performance and surrounded by great performers. Like this is like John C. Reilly has a tiny role in this thing.
Yeah.
Whoever cast this was a genius.
Yeah.
Because it felt new and fresh and original in a way that it shouldn't have, given the subject matter and given that the whole idea that this is like it's a genre story that is recognizable, which is why it's so good, which is why it excels at playing the notes, the human notes inside the standard standoffs and debates and arguments, right? Like it is about the people in this situation. It's not about the situation.
No, absolutely. And I think, in addition to the performances that really, I think, and I hate this word because it's overused, but that elevate it, right? I mean, it could have very easily been by the numbers. It's again, it's down to the direction. And I think that the way in which he kind of weaves in and out of slow motion in this, in a way and it's not just in, I mean, there's obviously the end shootout is in slow motion and it's very cool and very stylish, but it's not even just that he does it. Like there are a lot of scenes, kind of at the end of a heavy scene where he'll just sort of go into slow motion. And it kind of, to me, always sort of signified this sort of like dreamy haze that Terry had kind of found himself back in, because of this world that he, had worked so hard to get away from, but now had been kind of sucked back into, and with the cloud of booze around him and all that. It's just an interesting touch that I think helps, set the story so well,
Yeah, like an undertow.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I love stylistic touches. Why don't people do those anymore?
Right. Yeah.
We're in a place now too where this kind of story would end up being, an 8-episode first season on Netflix that never gets finished. Like
exactly.
you can absolutely see the appeal of this in a long form. Like there's I don't know if you're watching it, but there's a show on Disney Plus and Hulu called Furious.
Oh yeah, I am actually. Yeah.
It's ostensibly it's a remake of Black Widow from 1987, which is amazing because it isn't.
Yeah, but other than she's killing men, it bears no resemblance to the original movie.
Yeah.
Like none. Yeah.
Two women tracking each other, like two women operating in separate spheres, I guess, maybe. But I've just been so impressed with what Elizabeth Meriwether has done with that premise, where it's like, okay, I see the bones of it here and here and here, and now we're just going to go off and tell our own story. And it doesn't even matter that the two characters aren't in the same room until episode 6, I think.
Yeah.
It's great. It's absolutely great. And every now and then I sort of think about the whole IP thing and everything getting recycled and rebuilt and reimagined. Sure. And I try to recast State of Grace in my head, and I don't know. I think it's. I mean, one of the biggest problems is it's aggressively white. It has to be, right, because it's set among Irish and Italian gangsters. You can't get away from that.
Yeah.
But the world that it exists in doesn't exist anymore. Like Hell's Kitchen is fully gentrified. There is no way to tell the story this way.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think I think that's exactly it. And so many of these, it's hard to. I too, I'm not a huge fan of sort of reimaginings unless there's a really unique way to do it. And I think so much of what worked with a lot of older movies that we love so much is just the period in which they occurred, right? And sure. We talked about it a little bit before, but just as far as the lack of cell phones and internet and all that, I mean, that just fucks with so many things narratively now. You know what I mean? It's just like, no, they'd know, they'd be able to figure that out in 2 seconds. So it really makes, yeah, it makes telling certain types of stories a little more challenging. But yeah, like I don't even know what I don't know what the fight would even be for anymore, because you're right, everyone's gone.
Yeah. Now it would be about the Applebee's rights for the whole city or something.
Yeah,
Some
exactly.
sad
Exactly.
touristy
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do. I mean, I don't, not that I'm arguing that it should be done, but it would be a nice way of getting the original property back into people's minds. That's my takeaway
Yeah.
from most of these. Is like, yeah, but now there's a better version. There's an original version. Go find that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. It's funny. And I'm surprised this is also like I mean, I know it's on Prime and I know it's on Tubi, but I'm surprised this is something that maybe it has at some point, but I'm surprised this is something that hasn't been one of those Netflix, like, look at this incredible movie that's 30 years old and it's number one, like you hear so many of those now, like where people are kind of
Yeah.
finding these old, maybe it's just a little too old for that now too, because I think that even their appetite for sort of older films usually taps at around 20 years in the past.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's something that I think if more people, were aware of it, they would definitely, tap into it. It's like this is another one of that era too, but King of New York was another one that I think,
Oh, yeah.
kind of found a life long after. And there's a lot of people and it's more of a, I would say, potentially cartoonish version of a mob story, but one that wasn't like a smash at the time, but has definitely found a long and loving audience since then.
Yeah, absolutely. And also has that sense of an ecosystem of criminals
Yes.
in a working city.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. Plus one of Christopher Walken's most fun performances. That is a great movie.
It's a great movie. I mean, again, that was kind of it was sort of the lesser cousin to New Jack City at the time, right? So
Yeah, maybe.
which I love. I'm not gonna shit on New Jack City because I love that, but I think that King of New York is maybe a little more of a grown up um gangster story. But
Yeah. Well, it's Abel Ferrara's, his whole Crime and Punishment thing.
yes.
Nobody
Yes.
can touch him on that. Like
Yeah, true.
he's
Fair
gonna tell
enough.
this ornate,
Yeah.
quasi-gothic,
Yeah.
heavily religious, like Bad Lieutenants around the corner. There's all this
Yeah.
weighty stuff going on. But you
And by the
also,
way, if you look at King of New York too, like everybody's in it. Like
yeah,
the number of like guys that are in it is like, oh my God, him too. Like it's great.
yeah. I remember seeing, is it James Lawrence, the lead in Frankenhooker? I think I saw them within a day of each other. And
Oh,
so like,
really?
how does the same guy occupy the same space in both of these movies? This is
Well,
nuts.
because we used to hire guys that were interesting to be in movies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
New
the
York casting
that's the
director is
quick
the
answer.
answer.
Yeah, that's the quick answer.
Yeah.
And now they
Well,
just do Law and Order.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's a nice way to break.
Yeah.
But then there's nothing. Yeah, that's it, right? Like they were cycling through all the theater actors and all the character actors. And then
Yeah.
if you get lucky, someone sees that episode. And now there's just so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
People don't pop the way they used to.
It's true. It's true. It's funny. I've been just not through any design, but like this week, I've been rewatching some Sidney Lumet stuff and Prince of the City, which I hadn't seen before, and I'm surprised.
Oh, big picture.
Yeah, and you want to talk about character actors? That like every character actor who ever was is in that movie, and and sometimes like to do nothing other than sit in a chair and get to have a couple lines. But yeah, that is one thing. I'm not unique in saying this, but that is one of the things I think that we do miss with the way that film and TV is now. You're right. There's just a lot of, because there is so much stuff there, a lot of what used to be on offer for actors like that to kind of build a profile and build and just build a body of work. It's just not there. So, and it's too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you would think with the rise of streaming and all the television that's produced and all these series that have to be populated, you would think
Yeah.
that it would be working, but I think it's all just become sort of static white noise that people can't see through.
Yeah, and it becomes, and it also becomes a little difficult too, because I think because everything is so, so much of, because everything is so less centralized now as far as where things are shot and all of that.
Mm.
Um, it's not you're not in one location like it used to be in LA or New York, where you could build that kind of solid crew of working class character actors. But because you are kind of spread to the four winds, and while there is arguably more work, there's not so much in each location that you're going to be in that you can still, kind of foster that kind of, that kind of acting talent, right? So, you're just getting a lot of day players coming in to do stuff that, great for them, but again, not, it's just the machine works differently now. So
Yeah. Broader talent pool, but a shallower one.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
This is usually where I would bring up the end question of the podcast, which is,
Sure.
what of State of Grace have you lifted or borrowed or stolen, or is there any way you've homaged it? But there is this other thing that you've done, which I find so fascinating. In addition to actually making movies,
Yeah.
you are writing novelizations of existing films.
Right.
And this is so, as you said earlier on, we're about the same age, or certainly the same cohort.
Yeah.
I have still a dozen or so novelizations that I bought in the 80s, because that's what I did as a kid who couldn't get into R-rated movies. I would read the books.
Yeah.
And how have they come back? Like, it used to be the only way to possess a film before home video, and you had an artifact. And now I just find it absolutely fascinating that there is a demand for these things from movies that are already being celebrated and exist in special editions, and that you could have a box on your bookshelf that looks like a book, and instead the book is also available now for the first time.
Yeah, I think I think honestly it's and I don't mean to sound flippant with it, but I think a lot of it is just fandom, right? I mean, I get, Christian Francis, who runs Echo On Publications, which are the guys that are putting out Freeway. He was, basically what we just talked about. He was a guy that just loved novelizations as a kid and was really into them, and was a writer a horror writer, and had an opportunity for another publisher to do some books, and then just realized, I'm just going to do this myself, and really took off, and realized that there was life to be had, because a lot of the titles that they do are movies that do have a pretty deep fandom to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that while we are kind of used to now getting our 4K releases and with special features and all that, not every one of those has a lot of new material to bring to the fore. Some are doing new interviews and stuff, but it's just sort of like, how do you continue to sort of celebrate these works, or engage in sort of the fandom of it, in a new way, as opposed to retrotting old stuff. And one of the ways he wanted to do it was, with through novelizations. And I think what's interesting is that because any novelization is technically based on the screenplay from a film. So anyone that's read one sometimes will realize, even if it was a studio backed novelization, sometimes they do differ from the finished film. So what's been interesting is that in this case, we're looking at scripts from 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and looking at original versions of them that are in some cases quite different. I know that one of the books he did Session 9, Brad Anderson movie, phenomenal movie, and integrated elements of a prequel that never happened, and that kind of thing. So with Freeway, the script is definitely different than the finished film, and I would say a little grimmer in spots. um, but it's an interesting way to kind of look at a film from the original creator's perspective.
I guess then the question I would have is, how much of a responsibility do you have, given that the fans are the ones buying this and they know the movie inside and out, like, to give them what they want rather than what it might have been? Like, where's the balance between the final cut and the screenplay version?
Yeah, so I think I I mean, we definitely want to, we, in no small part because, for legal reasons that you really do need to have it based on the screenplay itself.
Sure.
I think that, speaking for myself, I was a big fan of Freeway. I loved that movie, and that was again another one that didn't get much of a release. And I think I only, God bless Siskel and Ebert. I think I found it because they also gave it a very positive review, and it was just, I just remember thinking it was just really unique, and again something that I love, really dark. It's a really dark retelling of the Little Red Riding Hood story, and um, Reese Witherspoon's just phenomenal in it.
Oh
But
yeah.
for me, it was a matter of I really I really liked that character, and how do I, Vanessa Lutz, and how do I expand on that character and stay true, to who she was and what she kind of represents, because she's Little Red Riding Hood, but she's fierce, and even though she herself is coming from a background of abuse and all that, it's really about how do you continue to not make she's by no means a victim, right? And I think that it could have been something that easily we could have fallen into that. So how do we kind of expand her world, and keep her sort of the fierce badass that she is, but by the same token don't go wildly, off book, and not stay true to, I think, what attracted a lot of people to the movie itself, right? So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that first act and most of the second is so claustrophobic and just two
yes,
people.
yes. Well, and that was it, for me, that was a bit of a challenge too, because I mean, a lot of that, as you say, so much of that is in the car. There's a lot
Mm.
of stuff in the car, and it's like, it's one thing to, it's one thing when you're watching a movie with some really funny banter and some interesting, moments of sinister menace, right? But communicating that with moving pictures is a very different thing than writing it.
Of
So
course.
so that was definitely an interesting challenge. And how do you keep a two-hander in a car compelling, right?
Mhm. On the
So
page. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And likewise too, like, for me, um I f- um I felt that the ending needed a bit of it needed a little bit of a denouement for her, you know what I mean? Because basically the movie ends, no spoilers, but she kills the wolf.
Yeah.
um
It's kind of
so
it's
the
kind of
movie
expected.
Yeah, the movie ends with that, but and that's really where it ends. And I was like, yeah, but in real life, like, what would they do? Would she have to go back to juvie? Like, what is so I wanted to kind of put a little bit of a bow on it for her, and not in a saccharine way, but in a way that sort of felt, like we properly sort of finished her story. So it was nice to have a chance to kind of do that too. So as I said, it was, it's in some ways it's a challenge, but also it's a fun thing to be, as a fan of the movie, to be able to kind of play in that world and kind of, expand it a bit and extrapolate on things that I really enjoyed about it. So
Yeah. Well, and so to the obvious question then, would you be interested in writing one for State of Grace? Would you want to get inside those characters?
oh yeah, hell yeah. I mean, I think that would be one to me. That would, I mean, so much of what I read, I mean, you can see the wall behind me with all my hard boiled detective stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would love to do that. I think that's something that would really lend itself to prose, because there is a lot of, there's so much character work there. So yeah, if there were an opportunity, for sure. It's a different, it's just a different set of muscles. I mean, I've written for film and TV before, and I'm obviously very familiar with what goes into that. So it was a real challenge, but a fun one to kind of figure out the shifting of gears, because so much of what you're doing in TV is like keeping the black space to a minimum, right?
Mhm.
And of course we're trying to do the exact opposite in in the world of prose. So yeah, but I again, I had a really fun time with it. I'm very, very pleased with the results, and I'm excited to get it out there.
My thanks to Aaron Barnett, whose novelization of Matthew Bright's Freeway is available this Sunday, August 30th, from Echo On Publications. You can order it at echohorror.com, ECHO horror.com. You can find Aaron on Blue Sky at bitterbarnett.bsky.social, and you can find that 4K special edition of State of Grace from Australia's Via Vision Entertainment. It's also streaming on Prime Video, Hoopla, and Tubi in the US and Canada, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 40 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, get all the boosters. I'll see you next week.